Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode 38 in the Craft Fair booth review series where I take a look at a real craft fair booth submitted by one of my channel subscribers, and I'll point out things that the vendor is doing well and should continue to do, and then also identify some areas where maybe there's some room for improvement. During the review, keep your craft fair booth in mind so that you can apply these tips in order to take your setup to the next level. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so for today's booth review, we're going to be taking a look at Mark's booth, and his business name is Liveoak Woodworx. He has a wide variety of creations made of wood, so we're going to see a various range of products. He's based out of Texas, okay, so excited to cover Texas on the channel. And the booth that we're going to be looking at today is an indoor 10 by 10 foot booth. And the review is going to be kind of like a general review. There was no specific questions that Mark asked me to address during the review, so we're just going to offer up as many tips as possible within the 10 categories. So without further ado, let's get into the first one here, and that's going to be displays. So as we take our first look at the booth here, we can see that the first thing we're going to probably notice is the two large grid walls as end caps. There's several wooden crates. As we go through the rest of the booth, we're going to kind of see those on the inside. And there's also numerous stands in order to prop up the projects upwards and outwards. So that's most of the displays that we're going to be looking at in this segment here. So let's take a look at this angle really quick over here, because this bridge between the two wooden crates is kind of a nice little display that I wanted to touch on. And it covers the gap between the wooden crates really well. It provides some personality, and it's also a functional addition to the booth. Okay, so this was one of the displays that I noticed right off the bat that was kind of nice. It's functional and it looks attractive at the booth. One of the things that we're going to focus on here is the grid walls out front. Since these are the parts of your booth that people are going to notice first, you want to make sure that you're giving visitors as much variety of product in view as possible. So with that being said, there are three very large flags taking up approximately half of the total display space that you have out front on these grid walls. Yet some very nice items at your booth, such as your cutting boards, for example, they don't make it out front on the grid walls. So one thing that I would consider doing is making sure that you save enough room out front here to have a little bit of everything showcased on these grid walls in order to improve your chances of attracting shoppers from a distance. There's the possibility of appealing to a wider or additional demographics of shoppers with this strategy. So basically you want to cast as wide of a net as possible. And I think using the three flags here, I don't want to say it's redundant, but I don't know if it's the best use of all of this square footage that you have out front. So now let's take a look in closer on the inside of the booth, and this is what I mean by a few of these items being propped up with these stands. You can see them right here. If I can kind of highlight this area, you can see them right here propping up these bigger projects. And I think that you've done a nice job with these displays. They're very subdued, hardly noticeable at all, and the sole focus is on the item itself. Okay, so this is really what you want to see at the booth, where the displays, again, all that they're doing is just trying to get it so that you can showcase your items the best that you possibly can. And if you can keep your displays kind of subdued, that's nice, because you want the focus to be on your works and not necessarily all these supporting role elements of your booth. Again, over here, we see this in abundance, all the different displays that are being used to prop the items upwards and outwards. And this is just going to showcase these works really well from a great distance. Whenever you can kind of prop things outwards, it's going to attract people from a much longer distance, as opposed to forcing them to pretty much walk up to your tables and look straight down at something being laid down on the tables. So again, this is kind of why I want to circle back to those grid walls out front that we mentioned, to get as much variety out there as possible. Definitely put one of those cutting boards out here, get a little bit more variety out here so that you can, again, cast that wide net for the demographic of maybe people that wouldn't be interested in the flags, but maybe they'd be be interested in something else that's also great at your booth. All right, for our next element, we're going to talk about pricing, and there's a lot to like about pricing at the booth. We're going to go around and point out some things that the vendor is doing well. The first is that the price tags feature the business branding. Okay, so that's one of the first things that you see is that logo up top on the pricing card. And I like that you also have a blank spot where you can write in your prices. Having a blank slate, so to speak, tag like this is a good idea because your prices may vary based on different situations. For example, the size and the popularity of the market or the craft fair itself. Maybe you're price testing your items. So maybe it's like a new item that you're rolling out and you're not quite sure if that price is really truly locked in yet. So that's kind of another reason to sort of have a blank slate for your pricing cards. Or it could even be that you have a sale on this particular event itself. So sometimes crafters will do this where maybe it's the end of the season and they're looking to kind of push out inventory. There's a lot of different reasons why you might have a sale. But just a side note, you guys always announce your sales in advance. Never do a sale kind of like mid-event because it can get you into some hot water with your neighboring vendors and possibly even the organizer. They definitely prefer to have your pricing set for the entire event, and what happens, okay? Other vendors, for example, they might not like price slashing during an event because it makes them feel like they've just been placed out of the show, like their prices are obsolete now. So it's not really a good look. It's not really good form, good etiquette for a vendor to do this. So anyways, this is just kind of a long roundabout way of saying plan your pricing in advance. And if you have a sale, great, throw it up on social media. Just let people know that you're going to be doing it for an event, but definitely avoid the price slashing during shows. But anyways, if we look at these coaster sets down here, this is an example of how the pricing is kind of just a blank slate. And we can see that there's the logo and it's a square card and has the dollar sign and a line. And then they've just written in the cost for the coaster sets. Up here, there's also sort of like a really full blank slate where there's the logo up top and then it's just completely blank underneath. Okay, so you can kind of just have a whole bunch of these in your tote that you bring to your craft fairs, and as items sell, you can kind of mark them differently and just use this price card again as a blank slate. But as a little side note here, it is a nice touch putting a business card with your pricing cards. It's a good idea to give every person who buys from your booth a business card. So this is a nice way to do that in a manner that looks professional and is efficient for you. It's already pretty much packaged all together. So it's nice for the shopper. It's nice for the vendor. It's just nice all around to see it packaged up this way. All right, the second form of pricing that we see at the booth is zoned pricing, where similar items are grouped together and one sign displays the price of all those items. We see that here with the keychains. This is a good method to incorporate, especially for smaller products like this, where a price tag is about the same size as the product itself, and it would create a messy appearance on the rack if the keychains are held on with a price tag on all those individual keychains. It would just really take the focus off the product itself. So zone pricing here creates a clean look that makes it clear and obvious what each of those items cost. So this is a very good decision made here on your pricing. Now, the third thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to pricing is back here, this Venmo sign that you see at the back of the table. Great job with this, as it really fits the vibe and the theme of your booth. Obviously, the wood craft, it looks fantastic. And this is a great example of going the extra mile to ensure that you're not cutting corners when you easily could. Yes, this could be printed off on a sheet of paper, but having the Venmo sign match the look and the quality of the booth shows that you care about creating an elevated experience for the shopper. Vendors, if you're looking for something like this at your booth, hop on Etsy and do a search. I just typed in the phrase custom payment method sign and a bunch of attractive designs came up in the search results. So, this is something that you can do again to kind of take that booth presentation to the next level, and it starts to separate you from, kind of the beginner vendors and the amateur setups to something that looks definitely more professional. All right, so now the next thing that we're going to talk about is signage. And based on these photos that have been sent to me, there is currently no signage at the booth. This presents obviously a massive opportunity for growth because when a vendor is participating at a craft fair, there's a lot of messages that you can, and honestly that you should, convey to shoppers at in-person events. You want to let people know that you have a website or whether or not you offer customized products and what payment methods you accept at your booth, as well as your return policy. Even a sign that lets customers know about any high quality materials used in the making of your items. That could be really helpful to have at the booth as well. Just for example, if you have something that says made with high quality walnut and cherry hardwoods, I would recommend doing something like this, especially near your premier showstopper type of items. That kind of appears to be the left side of the booth over here, where you have very large, ornate, just really great looking pieces. I would probably put something like that over here because you just want to establish credibility in everything that you've done here at the booth. So consider what kind of signs will enhance your booth. You don't need to go overboard with signage, but think of what will benefit your shoppers the most while keeping in mind that there's nothing wrong with boasting about the high quality materials and craftsmanship it takes to bring your works to life. All right, so now let's just go ahead and talk about marketing. So the first item that we're going to look at is the banner located in the center table over here. The location of this item within the booth is good. It's centered in the booth. It's facing outwards towards the customers. The size of the main font or the business logo in itself is great. It's very eye-catching. I mean, you can't miss it. I also really like that you included the phrase below it, Aggie and veteran-owned small business. For those unfamiliar, Aggie is a nickname for the alumni of Texas A&M University. It's a university that is well-known and has a strong sense of pride for its supporters and alumni. It also appears that this event itself is actually taking place at the university. Okay, so if we look in the background here, we see all the athletes from Texas A&M on the backdrop over here. So I would assume that this is taking place like somewhere on campus, or at least something affiliated with the campus. So obviously, the fact that you've attended Texas A&M is a great thing to advertise in this environment. One element, though, that could use some improvement when it comes to the banner is the placement of the logo. I like the fact that it's centered. It is centered well, side to side, but it's positioned too high up off the ground or too close to the table, either way that you want to look at it. I know that there's no easy fix or solution here because the banner is already made, but perhaps, maybe it's something to keep in mind if you decide to have another banner made at some point, is maybe it would be better if, kind of the wording was all sort of in this zone where it's a little bit up off the ground, but then not like directly on top of the table. Just a little bit better placement that way when it comes to kind of like the vertical layout. But besides that, I do like the table runner there. So as we pull back and take a look again at the entire booth, it might be nice to add something to the top of your wire grid walls out front. I know that right now this was during a holiday event, so you have the garland and you have the ribbon, and that's nice. Don't get me wrong, those touches are nice to add, and even the little trees down here, that gives some nice flavor to the booth. But even if it's something up here at the top, as simple as another logo for your business, there's nothing wrong with really pushing the branding hard at a booth. You want to make people remember your name. So this space up at the very top does feel a little bit underutilized. There's a lot of clips that can be added to grid walls where you can add signage basically to the very top of them. And there's a simple clip that attaches to the top of a grid wall. Check Amazon for those. You can get those for really, really inexpensive. And, this just feels like a little bit of an underutilization of space up at the top on both sides. Okay, so just keep in mind something for signage, something for marketing that you can use up there just to add that extra punch to the outward presentation of the booth. Okay, if we zoom in again and we kind of hop back inside the booth, I do like that you have business cards out on tables in a couple different locations at the booth. but they sort of get lost with all the other pricing cards and the tags sprinkled throughout the booth. Just kind of in this shot right here, we see a lot of similar looking cards, and it does get a little bit washed out. It doesn't really stand out quite as well as maybe we'd hope for the business card holder. So I know that it's pretty taboo to paint over natural woodwork, but I might consider painting your business card holders either white or some sort of third color at your booth to help make them stand out. Some might not agree with me on this recommendation or this tip, but I just feel like they need to stand out a little bit more so that they are not getting lost in that shuffle of all the price tags and all the other cards at the booth. So we can kind of see that here in this angle, and we see that over here pretty well as the last shot. So the business cards are right here, but they sort of kind of blend into everything else that's going on around it. So maybe just think about some different things that you can do to make those business cards stand out just a little bit more. Nothing crazy, you don't have to go overboard, but just make them stand out a little bit better. And we're going to stay on this view right here because a nice marketing element taking place at the booth is the free pens. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit further so we can see here. But you can see them laid down on the table right here with a little note that says free, take a pen. I'd actually go ahead and create a nice sign for this, and better yet, place an email sign-up sheet in this vicinity so that you can hopefully build up your email contact list while also promoting your brand with a tasteful giveaway at your booth. I think people might get a kick out of it where they could just pick up a pen to sign up for that email contact list and then just keep the pen. Okay, so there's maybe like a sort of like a woven in possibility here of jumping on a few different opportunities and tying it all together with getting people to sign up for your email list, giving away a pen, having a sign that kind of points it out as like a little nice feature at your booth. There's a lot of different perks that you can sort of tie into one thing, one activity taking place at the booth. But again, this is a really nice gesture for your guests, and kudos to you for offering your visitors something for stopping by your booth. Obviously, keep in mind the expense of doing this and make sure that it always makes sense with your budget as a vendor. Now, if you aren't worried about potential financial impact of giveaways and the time and the effort and the material costs that it takes to make this happen, then you don't need to take that part too seriously, and you can just enjoy the good feeling that you get of offering a nice treat for your shoppers. But if you kind of do care about that bottom line when it comes to at least this element of your booth, then of course just factor that in and make sure that you're rolling that into all your numbers so that you're factoring everything in. All right, now let's talk about vertical space at the booth. I definitely think this is the strength of the booth, and there's a wide variety of heights throughout the entire space for visitors to enjoy. Again, the 2 grid walls out front, that offers tremendous amount of vertical space to work with. Within the booth, you're doing an excellent job of propping up taller items and then using the table space in front of those goods to lay other products down. Let's take a closer look at that in action over here, and you can kind of see the taller items with other things happening out in front of it. So this is really great use of your table space, not only front to back, but also vertically. Now, if we take a little bit of a closer look over here, there are some nice decisions being made when it comes to stacking products. Not really something that I've talked about on the channel a lot before. So if you take a look at these 2 kitchen items over here, they look like cutting boards, okay? You can see that there are several identical items stacked underneath the item on display. There's a lot of reasons why I like this move. I like it because if you sell one of the items, you won't have to dig through your bins mid-show just to replace the product on display. Simply grab the next one in the stack and keep it going, or just sell the one in the stack and keep the one up on display. However you want to do it, that's fine. But the point is that it's a very big time saver, and it kind of just keeps everything moving. Keep her moving. It also lets people know that you have more than one item within that particular design, and there is an off chance that you might be able to sell more than one at a time. And yeah, it's not a big chance, but it's better than no chance at all. But as far as your vertical space goes throughout your entire booth, I'd say that you're doing an excellent job, and keep up the great work with this element of your setup, because as we take a look around at these different shots, it's just a really nice mix of different strategic moves, but it's all making sense. So here you see the wooden crates. We talked about that kind of bridging of the gap before. That adds some verticality. Some of your products in themselves kind of stand up higher, so this one stands up on its own. That's offering some verticality, and it's also filling in sort of like that back row visually, again, as we have those small items that are set down on the table. Over here we have the really big premier items. Gorgeous work, by the way. Looks fantastic. But yeah, we see these bigger items kind of propped up and outwards, and you're getting a really good look at so much of the design at one time. So that's an excellent move. That's a good way of using vertical space to your benefit, is to try and show off as much of the design as possible by going upwards, propping things upwards. This back row is getting a little bit hidden, so maybe you could get just like a small little table riser for sort of like these 3 items on the back row and go just a little bit higher with those. You could even probably make one pretty easily and then just cover it in some black cloth, tack that down to a piece of wood if you have to, you can create it yourself pretty easily for pretty inexpensive, but just something that kind of fits in with the vibe of everything that you're doing, So again, I would cover it in some sort of black cloth that matches your tablecloths as much as possible. And then you can go ahead and get those back level products displayed a little bit better. So that's really the only thing I would say about that. But yeah, otherwise, everything that we look at is really good. It checks out. It shows off well. Things are not difficult to access for the shopper, for yourself either, if you make a sale, if you make a purchase. So yeah, very nicely done. The only thing that we, kind of come back on and circle back to is the grid walls out front. Just make sure that you're using as much of the space as possible. And decorating, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with saving some of the real estate for decorating if there's a holiday theme or, some sort of theme that you're tying into. So that's okay. But I would just say, swapping the flags out so that you have as most variety as possible out there, so keep 1, maybe 2 of the flags, put 1 on each side, but that's about it out there. All right, now let's talk about colors, contrast, and textures. So for colors, we're mostly dealing with black and white. Your logo, your business cards, and your other marketing materials are mostly black and white, with the exception of the price tag bundles, which feature additional colors that fit in well with your business branding. So what I mean by that is kind of like the beige and the tan cards that are taking place over here. So it kind of has that rustic look. It has that wooden, vibe to it. So that's sort of like the 3 colors that we're dealing with: the black, the white, and sort of like these 2 earth tones that coincide with the wood. The tablecloths, of course, are black, and that sets up a professional looking platform for your products to shine upon. At the end of the day, the color pops at your booth come from your products themselves, and that is a tremendously positive quality to have mastered at a craft fair booth. Vendors, keep in mind that if one thing does the talking at your booth, let it be the items that you've crafted, okay? Let it be the products that you're trying to sell. Make them the star of the show. Everything else at the booth is the supporting cast. And since we're talking about color, you've done a great job here of making sure that premier pieces are showcased well enough that those color pops come through. Okay, so this piece in particular right here, absolutely beautiful color that's coming through on it. And again, the items themselves can be your color pops. It doesn't necessarily have to be the signage or the price tags or the marketing materials. If your items themselves are doing the color popping, well, then that's great too. So now that we've talked about colors quite a bit, let's touch on contrast. And as far as contrast goes, you're making good decisions there as well. One spot in particular I'd like to point out is the bottle openers on the right side of the booth contained within the wooden crate. It would have been easy enough to just set those down inside of the crate alone, or to plop them on the table somewhere, but instead you found an attractive vessel to display these pieces. The rich wood grain against the black pan looks incredible, and it's even better that the black pan is placed inside of the bright wooden crate instead of just on the table, which that would have brought it to a black on black setup with very little contrast. So this is a great example of how you can use color contrast to your advantage as a vendor. So well done here, Mark. And when we take a look at the textures throughout the booth, obviously there's a considerable amount of wood. So I like the fact that the black tablecloth breaks things up a bit visually. The items laid on top of or around your table runner also look great, and I appreciate the use of solid colors at this booth. Any kind of patterns on the cloths or the table runner or even the displays would be quite harmful to the clean aesthetic that's currently featured at the booth. So great job here as well. All right, now we're going to talk about strength of theme. So obviously here the theme is woodwork, and it's built right into the business name in itself. That's kind of nice to do, you guys. If you're kind of new, or maybe even if you're like a veteran vendor and you're looking for sort of like a rebrand, it is worth considering to put basically the category of your crafts right into your business name, because this can be helpful for a lot of reasons. Obviously, if you're at an event, you can just look at the booth and understand, oh, okay, this is a woodworking booth. But what about when the event organizer posts some kind of a list of vendors participating in an event? Think about it that way, where somebody's scrolling down, like, who's going to be at this show? Is it worth coming to this show? And they see a business name that's called Liveoak Woodworx. Well, if you're looking for that type of thing, that can pull people in just by the name recognition alone of the type of crafts that you create. So this is sort of like the things that you kind of have to think about when you're naming your business. Just think about the way that you guys are marketing your business and how that can attract people that you might not have before if you just have a phrase as a business name that doesn't necessarily have any correlation or connection to the type of crafts that you create. But yeah, as we circle back again to strength of theme, obviously doing a great job of exploring a lot of different ways that you can use woodwork and the various applications that shoppers can purchase your goods and use them, so you have some items here that are strictly decorative, and then you have some items that serve a purpose. Like we have the bottle openers, for example. Then you had the wine set. Okay, so that serves like a functional purpose besides just strictly decoration. Again, the cutting boards, that's also functional. So there's a good mix here of kind of just playful, whimsical, and then products that serve a purpose. So as far as strength of theme, I think this is definitely one of your strong suits, not only just in your setup, but the different types of products that you offer, and then even how you're advertising and the way that you've named your business itself. All right, so now we're going to talk about accessibility. And when I refer to accessibility, I'm kind of talking about a few different things. One, what is the ease of access to the booth? So can people approach it? Are there any kind of tripping hazards? And then do people want to approach the booth? Is it tidy? Is it well kept? And just various situations within all of that. So let's kind of just back up here and look at it from a safety standpoint. The only really thing that I see here is this foot of the stand sort of sticks out just a touch. Nothing extreme. So just one thing to kind of look out for there. It is kind of nice that you have a decorative piece down here. I would maybe even move this in a little bit closer to the foot of this stand so that basically people can't walk over this, you know what I mean? So something is blocking the stand in and of itself. So that's kind of one way to alleviate a potential tripping hazard, is put an object right next to something that might be sticking out, and then that way it's basically impossible to trip over something. In the middle of the booth, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. You've got your tablecloths at fantastic length. They're the stretch tablecloths, so obviously there's nothing to be concerned about. And then as far as your table runner, it's pulled down to a perfect height. That's exactly where you want to see it, like an inch or two off the floor so that it's not rolled up. And then, of course, you don't want it hanging like a half a foot or a foot off the floor where there's a whole bunch of empty space underneath it. So this is exactly what you want to see, vendors. Like an inch or two off the floor is perfect. And then as far as the tidiness factor, this booth is absolutely spotless. Even as we kind of went around and we were looking at different shots, I mean, the tablecloths are absolutely immaculate. There's no rips, there's no seams, there's no tears, no stains, nothing. Everything looks really, really nice. Vendors, if you're struggling to kind of keep your tablecloths looking clean, definitely pack a lint roller into your kit, like your survival kit, basically, that everybody brings to the craft fairs. That's one thing that's really nice to have in there is a lint roller, because you can kind of just, in between the show, maybe every couple of hours, just give your booth a really quick once over in between customers and just make sure that things are looking nice and tidy, because that does make a difference. The cleanliness absolutely does make a difference. It makes people feel welcomed, and they want to stay in there for a little bit longer when it's tidy and it's very attractive. And then let's just approach accessibility here from a visual standpoint of how close do visitors have to be to your booth to understand what's going on and being sold at your booth. So I'm going to back up one more time, and we're going to talk about these grid walls one last time, because that I think is a really big factor in pulling the people in. I do like the outward facing grid walls that you've got going on, because it really kind of just broadcasts from a great distance what's happening at your booth. The top here, that could use some signage. Okay, so get those little clips for the grid walls to put some sort of signage that can help you in whatever way that you can think of, whatever way is going to best suit your needs at any given show. And then again, just offering as wide of a variety of possible of products on the outside to attract as big of an audience as possible at your booth. All right, so how about we roll right into general use of space? So again, a 10 by 10 booth that we're looking at here, pretty good. I mean, pretty good. You can probably get, I would say, about 7 to 8 people in and around the booth, maybe about 5 or 6 in the booth, and then maybe a couple on each side. That's probably good. That's probably reasonable for this setup. And at an indoor event, it's a little bit more challenging to come up with a 10 by 10 that fits as many people as possible. Outdoors, you definitely get a lot more leeway. Generally, there's like some room in between the canopies. So, you kind of have like that outside of the canopy experience that people can get. And this is more of like an inverted U shape where people walk into this U shape of the tables. So that's probably the best that you're going to be able to do at an indoor event, unless you were on an end of a row. So you know how sometimes the organizer will have about 5 or 10 different booths in a row, and then some of the vendors happen to be on the end of that row where you get sort of like an aisle on 2 sides of your booth. Well, then that's when you can kind of have like an outward experience, and you can sort of build your booth out so that you're exposed to 2 different aisles, and there's a little bit more possibility there to attract more people. But this appears to be the case where you were kind of like locked into just one part of the aisle. So to me, I do like this booth setup for this particular placement within the venue, and I think it's a good use of your space. We did talk quite a bit about vertical usage in this video, and I think you're making great use of your space there. These types of products, you don't want to really put in any kind of like precarious positions. Like you can't really go too crazy with like shelving and stuff like that where it's multi-tiered, because if somebody were to bump into that and one of these projects were to fall, that would be really heartbreaking, because some of these are really beautiful works of art, to be honest. So you don't want to go like too crazy with verticality. Sometimes, it's about just, kind of maximizing like what you can do on the table. And I think the crates were a good example of that. We can look at that another time here. So again, we sort of had that bridging of the gap. And these items over here, they're wooden wallets, okay, on top. So like if one of these were to kind of fall over, I don't think anything would happen. I think that they'd be okay. Same thing over here with the flasks. All right. So, if something were to, get bumped over here and one of these were to topple over, probably not the end of the world. You know what I mean? So think about decisions that you can make in that regard as well, vendors, when you're kind of using your vertical space, what can you put at higher levels that, if something bad were to happen, it's going to be okay. But yeah, as we, kind of just take a look again at the booth as a whole, general use of space, I think you're doing a very good job. So job well done, Mark. Keep it up. And then finally, we have the eye test. And the eye test is the 1 or 2 seconds that a visitor is walking by. And what are you doing as a vendor to get them to stop and check out your booth? So again, these outward displays are so important, you guys. Don't always rely on people having to come into your booth to see what's happening. Do some projecting, do some outward displays that kind of show off a little bit of a glimpse of what's all happening at your booth. Give them kind of a teaser, so to speak. This sign right here with the magnetic bottle openers, it says $10 each. There's a lot of space dedicated to this, so maybe if you found something that was about half the size of this current sign, and then you put out like 2 or 3 of the round ones and then a couple of these oval ones, that is going to free up a little bit more room to get even more variety out on these grid walls. So just go with the focus that you want the grid walls to be as much variety of your booth as possible. Maybe set up like a little shelf on one of these where it's kind of like chest height or so, where you have some of your smaller products out there. So maybe take 1 or 2 of the wooden wallets, take 1 or 2 of the flasks, definitely take 1 or 2 of the coaster sets, and then put them on a shelf out here as well. So basically give people a taste of everything that you have to offer at your booth out on these grid walls so that nothing is missed. And then you can kind of watch the people. If people are checking something out, maybe somebody is standing still and they're looking at a couple of wallets, or they're looking at a couple of different coaster sets, that's your opportunity. That's your cue as a vendor to be like, oh, hey, if you dig those, I have a lot more variety in here that you can check out. So that is basically a magnet for people that you can attract the people, and then, it might be your job as the vendor to get them all the way through, to see it through so that you can get that conversion into a sale. Well, all right. This was episode 38 in the Craft Fair Booth Review series. Mark, thank you so much for the emails and the fantastic photos of your booth. And I hope that this drives some traffic your way. Vendors, if you're interested in having your booth reviewed, go ahead and reach out to me either on my website or my email, and we can kind of get that ball rolling. It is going to take me some time to get a review done. I'm going to try to get it to the point where I'm doing 1 review every week to 2 weeks. And so that means that I back up, pretty easily. So just be patient with me. If you reach out to me, just know that your review will come, but it might take a little bit of time just because I'm trying to do a lot of these for a lot of people. But yeah, if you enjoyed today's video and you learned a little bit, please like and subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate that. It helps me tremendously. Trying to hit my first big milestone on the channel, which is 10,000 subscribers. And right now I'm at about 6,200 people. So we're getting there. We're kind of getting in the vicinity where I can start thinking about hitting that milestone, and that'd be great to reach. So I'd really appreciate that if you could subscribe to the channel. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.